pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I now call the scheduled meeting of the Board of Adjustments to order. Would Mr. Bodie from the Planning and Development Office please describe the function and operation of the Board of Adjustments to our applicants in the audience?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body established by the Board of County Commissioners under Chapter 62, Article 2, Division 4 of Brevard County Code. The Board of Adjustment is empowered to hear requests for variances to the zoning regulation and the sign regulation in Chapter 62, Article 6, and Article 9. Pursuant to Florida Rules of Appellate Procedure, any person or persons jointly or severally aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Adjustment may, within 30 days after the date the order is signed, apply to a court of competent jurisdiction for appropriate relief. Mr. Chairman, you have 3 items on your agenda today.
Thank you, sir. Would Mr. Thomas please explain to our applicants in the audience the definition of a hardship?
Yes, sir. A variance may be granted when it will not be contrary to the public interest and where, owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter will result in unnecessary and undue hardship. The term undue hardship has a specific legal definition in this context and essentially means that without the requested variance, the applicant will have no reasonable use of the subject property under existing development regulations. Personal medical reasons shall not be considered as grounds for establishing undue hardship, sufficient to qualify an applicant for a variance. Economic reasons may be considered only in instances where the landowner cannot yield a reasonable use and/or reasonable return under the existing land development regulations. The applicant must answer a variance hardship worksheet with 6 questions. The Board of Adjustments will discuss these questions today with each applicant who has requested a variance.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to address the board members, the applicants in our audience for a moment. The Board of Adjustments, as a quasi-judicial board with members appointed by the Brevard County Board of Commissioners, will utilize Robert's Rules of Order to conduct our meetings. The chair is asking all board members not to ask questions while the applicants are making their presentations. Once the applicants have completed their presentation, we'll begin with the board questioning with the board member who represents the applicant's district. When concluded, questioning is open to the full board. The chair will recognize each board member. Once all board members have completed their questioning, we will then open it to the audience who may be here to speak concerning the applicant's application. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak will be given the opportunity to address the board, but only once. At the conclusion of public comment, the applicant will be given additional time for rebuttal as well as to present any final comments. Once completed, no further comment will be heard from the applicant or the public. We will not use a timer for this meeting. Instead, we are asking each speaker to be concise in what they have to say, and it is important that you stay on subject and avoid information that is not relevant. All persons speaking must provide their name and address for the public record. Those wishing not to verbally state their address may ask the clerk at the podium for an address card, fill it out, and return it to the clerk. Are there any questions from the board members about the chair procedures? Any questions from the applicants about the chair procedures? Any questions from the audience about chair procedures? Seeing none, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made to these minutes? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Thomas to approve. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second by Ms. Mallard. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And our minutes are approved. Mr. Bodie, may we have the first applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1, variance application 20V 00034, David and Martha Salzen, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-1345B, to permit a variance of 1.2 feet from the required 7.5-foot rear setback for an accessory structure in an RU-1-11 single-family residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2608099 in District 4.
Would the applicant please come to the podium? Speak clearly into the microphone. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Dave Sossin, 120 Churchill, Satellite Beach.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
How may we help you?
Well, I'm not very good at impromptu speaking, so I've prepared a statement, if I may.
Sure.
It should encompass the relevant facts along with your application that you have in front of you.
Okay.
Esteemed board members, thank you for your time and consideration regarding the variance at 120 Churchill, Satellite Beach. I'm Dave Sossin, and I'm a longtime resident of Brevard County, and my wife and I intend to make this residence our forever home with the intention of deeding it to our children when that time comes. When we found the opportunity to buy beach property, we were thrilled, and when we discovered the renovation possibilities, we endeavored to arm ourselves with all the information possible to be able to do so through the proper channels. Being a 1960s property, garage space was very limited. Therefore, we decided to build a detached garage. In anticipation of that effort, we applied for 2 permits. The first was an electrical permit, which was approved and has since been finalized to go from the power pole overhead and then underground wiring to the meter socket to the house. The second permit, however, in order to complete that task, a pre-existing accessory structure had to be removed, which we did at our own expense. And you can see that from previous pictures on the county GIS maps. It's important to note that the structure which we removed was also encroaching into the current utility easement in the southwest corner of the property, including the 7.5-foot setbacks on both the side and rear lot lines. The second permit, which was approved and is currently in the process of construction, is the detached garage itself. During the permitting process, per natural resources review, there were 2 invasive pepper trees in the easement as well, which we also removed. Since the beginning of the build, we've passed 3 inspections. However, the 4th inspection could not be scheduled until we submitted a survey well into the project. It was then we were told there was a minor encroachment into the rear setback. After the foundation was laid out and prior to the concrete pour, we submitted an inspection request via view specs where we uploaded pictures demonstrating our layout position. We received guidance from the county supplied inspection card after the permit was approved, which states for size and location, which passed and allowed us to continue with the pour. Currently, the building is 8 feet from the side setback and fence line and 8 feet from the rear fence line, which has been established for decades. Unfortunately, it takes these kinds of situations to look back and deep dive into what happened to know how we could have avoided getting to where we are today. This is when we discovered the discrepancy between the fence line and the property line on the south and east sides. This entire event could have been avoided if a survey had been requested prior to the pour, and this discrepancy would have been revealed and rectified with minimal expense. In retrospect, we don't understand why a layout survey wasn't required for our project, as we have come to discover after the fact has been required as a part of the permitting process for other accessory structures in our zoning classification. After the initial shock of the potential costs associated with compliance, I learned about the variance process, and that's why I'm here today. Our goal with this project is to not only add form and function to our home, but to add value to our property and neighborhood as well. We believe that when the project is complete, it will bring character to our community and inspiration to our neighbors to do the same. Our only desire is to create a harmonious environment for our home and neighborhood, and our landscape plan will reflect that too. As it stands, the building is completely clear of the 6-foot utility easement, and if it were this time any prior to the implementation of the current technological advancements in place with surveying and mapping techniques, this otherwise approved structure would meet today's setback requirements. So in closing, I'd like to respectfully ask the board to consider when making your decision that our fence line, which we have not moved, was once considered the property line, and that's what created this discrepancy in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me just, for a point of clarification, Dr. Bass is with us today. She is the alternate in District 4. Although she can sit in on the meeting, she does not vote on these procedures, so just be aware of that, please.
Yes, sir.
All right, District 4, Mr. Thomas.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Did you have a survey when you initially purchased the property?
We did, and that survey wasn't detailed to the point of the survey that we received and issued to the county for this project. and it didn't show the discrepancy as it's shown today.
Okay. And you're basically replacing what you want to build with what was there before? Same?
No, it would be bigger, and it would be concrete block, and it would be stucco. It would match the principal building. It would match our principal residence as well.
So size-wise, it is larger. When I was reading it, I thought it was just replacing the same size.
Larger than the original accessory structure, but much smaller than the principal structure.
And if I may, I'd like to ask the staff a question, if that's possible. It sounds like there's a concern about how the survey was asked for late in the game, and if it was asked for earlier, it would have been caught. Does the staff have any comment about that?
When we have a proposed structure that's within a foot of a setback, we ask for a foundation survey, so it should have been caught at the foundation survey place. You know, we could have asked for a form board survey, but we generally don't do that except for on swimming pools.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any additional questions.
Mr. McCain? Mr. or Ms. Mallard?
No questions.
Mr. Norman? I have just one. When you purchased a house, I assume you had a survey done at that point?
We did, and it also demonstrated the original accessory structure, which said in the surveyor's notes that it was encroaching into the setback, and that's kind of what raised red flags for us to say, well, we got to get rid of that. And then we recognized we had the room to be able to build something per what we thought was the within the setbacks and current zoning requirements, and that's why we moved forward with tearing down the existing accessory structure and then taking down the invasive species per the natural resources review.
Is your builder here or no?
No.
Okay, so let me ask a question then.
Sir.
When you laid out the garage, did he take a look at the survey that you had?
He did.
For the purchase of the house?
Yes.
And according to that survey, you were in compliance when they laid it out?
We believe so, yes.
And then the next survey that came, did it change the boundaries?
It did.
Okay, was it the same survey company?
Same survey company, yes. That's why we went with them. We
Okay.
went with them because we were going to get a break on the cost of the surveys. That's why we went with them. And
And they changed their
And it
survey?
changed. Yes, it did.
Okay. That's kind of strange and
It is.
frustrating
I
all at
didn't
the same
think that
time.
would happen, yes. I agree.
I've seen it happen rare, but it does happen from time to time. Okay, that's all the questions I have. If you can stand to the side for just
Yes,
a
sir.
minute, please. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, if you can come on back. Just clarification, I know we've only got 3 cases, but if you want to just stand to the side, then if someone comes up to speak, you can have a seat. Otherwise, you can just be right there to step back in. Any final comments?
No comments.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate your
Actually,
time.
I'm sorry, I do have
Yes.
one comment. With relation to the 2 variations of surveys, we believe, and it's our heartfelt intent to improve the property and give value to the property and neighborhood. However, we believe that if there were any opposition, or if there was someone that wanted to come forward during the appeal process that was in opposition to our project, we would say that it wouldn't change the sight lines. 1 foot wouldn't change the sight lines regardless. So let's say potentially if it was moved and it was within the current setback requirements, and that would put it 9 feet away from the fence, we still think that from an exterior point of view, outside of our property, it wouldn't change the sight lines at all.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move for approval, but limit the approval to the location depicted on the survey provided by the applicant on August 20th, 2023.
We have a motion to approve as depicted on survey by Mr. Thomas. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Nolan and Ms. Mallard. All right, any discussion before I go through the 6 points? I'll make one comment if I can, please, and then we'll do the 6 points. Due to the fact that there is a discrepancy in the 2 surveys, I don't think there was any malice or intent to do wrong. Because of that, I would not be objectionable to the approval of this. Again, that's my personal opinion, okay? All right, number one, special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. There are no special conditions that I see that exist that make this property any different than any other property in the area. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Again, there are no special conditions or circumstances. That granting of this variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by the provisions of this chapter of other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. We are not granting any special privileges. Should this be approved, we take each of these on a case-by-case basis, regardless of who the individual is. Number four, that literal enforcement of the provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and would constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. If we denied it, it would not deprive the applicant of any rights that he would be able to enjoy his property. As far as any unnecessary and undue hardships, since we are not allowed to take financial conditions in consideration, I will say the only unnecessary and undue hardship, in my opinion, would be that he would have to relocate the garage, and since it was not something that was intentional or that he did not take his due diligence, which I believe he did, I think that would be an unnecessary hardship, in my opinion. Number five, that the variance granted is the minimum variance that make possible a reasonable use of land, building, or structure. It is the minimum variance that would be required for the approval of this particular structure that he is building. That the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter. Such variance will not be injurious to the area involved, otherwise detrimental to public welfare. I do not believe that would be injurious to the area. I don't believe it's detrimental to the public welfare. And I do believe it would be in harmony with the intention of the code that is written. Again, taking into consideration that there is a discrepancy between two variants, or two surveys, one showing he's in compliance, the other showing he's not. Do you agree with that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the variance as depicted on survey, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Your variance passes, sir. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, item number two, variance number 23V00030, Angelica and Christopher Long Aleni, request variance at Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code. Variance number one, Section 62-1336-4, to permit a variance of 0.04 acres from the minimum 1 acre lot size in an RR-1 rural residential zoning classification. Variance number two, Section 62-1336-4, to permit a variance of 20 feet from the required 125-foot lot width required in an RR-1 zoning classification. The property is currently zoned RU-1-13 single-family residential, and this is located at tax account number 2806104 in District 5.
All right, and before we go further, I need to ask a question, ma'am. We had, I believe I've seen a letter of objection come in on one of these cases. Was it this one?
It was the last one that it was.
It was the very last one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one that was just heard.
The one was just heard? Okay.
And he had, I confirmed with him, he committed, he did receive.
Okay. I just remembered it, and I didn't remember which case it was, so my apologies for asking late. All right. Would the applicant please come to the podium? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Name, Christopher Long Lane, address 3120 Heald, Melbourne, Florida.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you for your service, and how may we help you?
Thanks for your support. Again, my name is Christopher Long Lane, and I wanted to ask for the variance of the 20 feet to the width of my property in order to apply for a zone change for RR-1. Currently, I have a budding horticultural business, and it's used for supplemental income for many reasons, daycare, and asking the board if they can approve the 20 feet so I can be in compliance, so I wouldn't have code enforcement called because I'm operating a horticultural in my current zone.
You're operating a what?
A horticultural business?
Okay. All right. You're in District 5? Mr. Noman?
Hi there. So just kind of going off of what he was saying, so what are you particularly growing and things like that, just for the purposes of discussion?
Shrubs, perennials, just regular landscaping, small
Okay,
landscaping
landscaping,
trees.
okay.
Correct,
Got
yes.
it, perfect. And then particularly, so you need this, but it's more so a designation, you're not putting anything next to, like, do you know where you would be putting, I'm looking at your aerial map right now, by the way. So where on the lot, are you trying to put it like next to
So
another
actually-
neighbor's location where you have
So
to ask them?
actually,
Yeah.
right off of my, you can see the pool fence
Yep.
at the back. Right after my pool fence, that's where everything would be conducted.
Okay.
And again, more so, it's not to violate the current zonage. But yes, it's going to be right in that area.
Okay. Do your neighbors know you have this kind of business? Like, do you have folks coming and going
They
for
do.
purchases and stuff?
And again, it's not, business isn't conducted at the site.
Right.
With the, in accordance with the zonage. But I don't want a future resident to notice, and it would become a problem. So I'm trying to get ahead of it
Sure.
before I have that problem.
Okay, sounds good. But you did say, though, the neighbors are aware that you're pursuing this
Yes.
kind of,
Yes,
and
they
they're
are.
generally okay with this kind of business in their community and all that?
Yes, sir. And again, we do have several properties down a same business, a larger business. So it is a common thing. I am the smallest of, I believe, 7 lots.
Okay.
So I would be the only one to ask for this width variance.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else falls within the square footage of an RR if they so choose to change their zonage.
And I definitely sympathize with the lot size. Like, you're basically there, it's just a very thin, narrow lot. Like, that's why I just want to make sure on the other pieces.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, Mr. Bodie, is there anything that we would be giving him a privilege on outside of like this that would be concerning that you know of? I'm not as familiar with this specific zoning spot, so I wouldn't want a
Okay.
future resident to cause an
Yes.
issue.
The RR1 is a rural residential zoning classification, allows for accessory agricultural uses. He wouldn't be able to have people come there and buy product from him. He'd have to take them to flea market, to somewhere else that allows that to take place. But it would allow for him to have horses or agricultural, horticultural nature and activities.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Do you know, and I should have looked this up, my apologies, the properties next to him, what their zoning is?
Yeah, hang on one second.
Are they in his current zoning, or are they what he's going to? Or wanting to go to? I guess.
Properties to the east and west are all currently the same as his zoning, RU-1-13.
So he would be the only one that would be changed in that section?
Within his property limits, yes.
Right. No. Yeah. Questions?
I have one question. So you were saying your neighbors have pretty much the same business as you. So your neighbors to your left and to,
No, ma'am. There's a business probably 6 lots down, and I believe they do fall into the RR, or I'm not sure exactly what, but they're not the same residential. But there's only one that's further down.
Yeah.
If you look on your map to the left.
here is who he's talking about.
Other questions, Ms. Mallard?
that's my only question. Thank you.
Sir? No, sir. Sir? No. Okay. I was hoping one of them would ask the question I'm thinking, but they didn't, so I'll ask it. I know you said landscaping, et cetera, and I don't know what the laws are on this, so you know where I'm going with this, right?
No.
Any marijuana growth, anything of that nature in the area?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, it's just, the neighbors might think differently if you were growing that versus, a
understand.
tree,
No,
okay?
no.
So, all right, that's all the questions I have. If you stand to the side for just a minute, anyone here in the audience like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, come on back. Final comments?
No, thank you for your time.
And thank you for your service. You may be seated.
Thanks for support.
All right, what's your pleasure?
In general, I do like to keep areas, in particular, neighborhoods like this where they're all zoned exactly the same, generally the same, but I'm also sympathetic to small business owners. So in that case, if it's just trying to earn some extra income and it's not a crazy amount of difference from the other one, it's just basically allowing for a few little tinkers, not major, I'm willing to make a motion to approve this, the zoning as is depicted on the survey.
It would be a variance
Or-
request.
or as the variance is requested, my mistake.
All right, Mr. Norman has made a motion to approve the variance request as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
I second.
And Ms. Mallard has seconded. Any comment? All right. That special conditions, circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. There are no special conditions or circumstances that exist. He is zoned just like everybody else in the same area. Number two, again, the special conditions, circumstances do not result in the actions of the applicant. Again, there are no special conditions or circumstances that I see. Granting of the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privileges. That is denied to the provisions of this chapter of other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. We would not be granting any special privileges should we grant this request, as anyone in his classification could come in and request the same type of provisions and try to rezone as well. Number four, that literal enforcement of this provision of chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification. Other provisions of the chapter will not constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. It would not deprive him of any rights to be able to enjoy his land. It would stop him from being able to do a business, but it doesn't deprive him of any rights that he would be able to enjoy in the same identical zoning classification that he is in, that everybody else is enjoying. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, building, or structure. It is the minimum variance required for the requested use and to be able to request rezoning of this property. That the granting of the variance is in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and as such variance will not be injurious to the area involved, otherwise detrimental to public welfare. I don't believe it would be injurious to the area involved. I don't think it's going to create any issues, whereas we've not had any comment from the neighbors. We're assuming that they do not have any issues as well. Any comment from you in regards to that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yep.
In that case, if there's no further comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the variance request as depicted on survey, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. And your variance request passes. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, item number 3, variance number 23V00027, Stacy L. Goforth and Lawrence I. Monroe, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, variance number 1, Section 62-2118D2, to permit a variance of 7.5 feet from the required 7.5-foot side east setback for a boat dock and a moored watercraft. Variance number 2, Section 62-2118D2, to permit a variance of 7.5 feet from the required 7.5-foot side west setback for a boat dock and a moored watercraft in an RU-1 11, single-family residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2417446 in District 2.
All right. Please state your name and address for the record.
Stacy Goforth, 305 Ursa Avenue, Merritt Island, Florida.
Sir?
And Lawrence Monroe, 305 Ursa Avenue, Merritt Island.
Please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence that you're about to give us Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
I do.
And how may we help you?
Good afternoon. We're here again. I think that you might have the paperwork that we've given you before.
Yes.
I'm just going to address the 6 points in the hardship request that we were asked to address to try to be as succinct as possible. Number one, the special circumstance and condition that brings us here today is that our lot is a pie shape on a canal in Diana Shores located in Merritt Island. It is unusual for a neighborhood. The shape of the lot makes the back very narrow and our seawall is only 31 foot wide. We have Exhibit A to show the shape of our lot. The unusual shape of the lot is because it's a corner and not as a result of anything we've done. The third point we were asked to address was the granting of this variance will not confer to us any special privilege that is denied by the provision to other properties in the identical zoning classification. We have Exhibit B, which is pictures of 12 other corner lots and properties in our neighborhood that have docks which either have 0 setbacks or extend beyond the extending lines of their property. So most of the other homes in our neighborhood that have lots like us, they have either not gotten permits at all because they definitely extend past the lines that Mr. Bodie explained to us that we have to stay within.
And we have all those.
Right.
okay.
So we have those pictures of all those other corner lots that we're talking about. Number 4, the literal enforcement of this provision would deprive us of the same rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the neighborhood. We have owned our 20-foot boat, Seacraft, since 2004 and use it weekly to enjoy the recreational privileges of living on the water. It would cause an undue hardship to us to own property in a canal community where we could not put in a minimal dock to lift and properly maintain our small 20-foot boat. We understand if any variance is granted, it needs to be minimum to accommodate our boat. We originally approached the county with Exhibit C, which only required a small variance on one side, a change from 7.5 foot to 5 foot. But Mr. Bodie explained to us because of the extending lines that we could not do that would not work. So we returned to our surveyor and he advised the only way to put in a dock and lift and for our 20-foot boat within that area would be what is proposed today. The proposed variances are in harmony with all the surrounding properties, and if approved, our dock will be one of the smallest in the canal. The proposed dock does not extend out any further into the channel than adjoining properties. Our neighbors' docks both go out into the channel as far or further than what we're proposing, so it doesn't narrow the canal at all. It in no way interferes with our 2 adjoining neighbors' docks and their ability to navigate the waterway or access their lifts. Both of our neighbors go into their properties, their boats go into their lifts away from our property at their other neighbors. And it doesn't impede the waterway at all for our neighbors. Issuing this variance will afford us the same rights already being enjoyed by our neighbors. We thank you for your time in considering this request.
Anything you want to add, sir?
No, she's very thorough.
Okay. All right, you're in District 2, Mr. McCann.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm just looking at the aerial map, and it appears that your property is located on the area of the canal that's the widest.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is figure out a way to construct a boat dock so you can use your property the way you intended it to use, but at the minimum type of intrusion to the neighbors or to the waterway.
Correct.
Be the maximum utilization for the maximum utilization for the restriction. So form and function, we've developed with the dock builders, the surveyors, and found a happy medium. The only option we have. There's no
It's-
other option for any smaller structure unless we have a paddle boat or, we would have to adjust down. And we're already the smallest we can get as far as utilization of a boat.
All right, so without the variance, then you would basically be without a boat dock.
Correct.
Correct. And like you can see, our one neighbor on that side, it comes so close, so we angled it away. It was the only way to fit it in there.
You have 31 feet of property at the seawall?
Correct. But so when we originally went into Mr. Bodie with our original plan, we were going to stay in it and go straight out, but we can't do that because of the intersecting lines. Can you flip
The
that
extension
one?
of the lot lines.
Right, right.
This one?
Yeah, that one right there. Like that was what we had originally done so that we wouldn't have to go to the zero variance request, but see how it goes outside of those lines. And Mr. Bodie said that you cannot get a variance to go outside of those lines. So we have to stay in those red lines.
If you look left or right from your property down the canal either way, are there docks or boathouses obstructing your view somewhat?
Well, in our neighborhood, because it's so small, most of the docks obstruct views because of the fact that they're right in the backyard. Like our neighbor's dock obstructs the neighbor next to them. They can't see out. Ours will not obstruct a view. Ours is angled away from one of the properties, one of our neighbors, and the other neighbor, their dock is right there, so it would, let me.
How does that guy enter his vote?
This way.
That's what I'm thinking. So he actually enters from the neighbors.
I have some live pictures.
Do you have a better picture?
And this guy goes this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's ours. Those two poles would be ours coming out. So I think,
And this is taken from.
Yeah, we have those
another
pictures.
neighbor. Oh, yeah, okay, good.
You can leave it there, that's fine. We have them now.
Those poles designate the maximum distance out and where the corners would be of the dock.
our corners don't go out further than our neighbors. Our corners are actually about 4 to 5 foot in, like if you're talking about like out into the canalway, into the canal. Ours is actually closer into our property than our neighbors are.
What do the white poles represent then? I'm sorry, I missed that.
My husband measured it and put the white poles in. That view, so the neighbor next to us that has that dock, his pole is actually further out into the canal than our poles are.
Okay.
We have wider width between those two white poles on the other side of the canal than if you measured their poles to the other side of the canal.
Do you intend to construct a roof on this dock?
We'll probably just have like a flat roof on the dock.
I don't have any more questions.
Kind of like the neighbor next door to us.
This is,
Most of the, yeah, there you go.
it's as minimal as you can get without, we haven't discussed as far as any kind of platform on top. We're trying to keep it as minimal as possible.
Now, reading your application, you're making considerations for your boat extending further out than the dock.
Our boat won't extend out any further. We discussed that with Mr. Bodie. It cannot extend out any further. So our boat has to be within those red lines. So when we drew that and we took it to Mr. Bodie before we came to this hearing, it fits within those lines, and he measured it to make sure, because that was his concern as well. So our boat will fit within those lines.
Okay, thank you.
That was my question, so that's good. Sir?
How much space is between your proposed structure and the covered boat dock to the east?
That's 9 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the picture, it's very hard. Looks like
Yeah,
very
it's,
close.
I'm sorry, step to the microphone if you're going to speak, please.
Probably a better representation would have been a drone kind of looking down on it, because it's hard. You stand on one dock so spatially, but from the furthest pole here to the structure, this is still within, it's 9 feet, because he has his 7-foot setback, and we are at least 2 feet within, because the property angles out on the east. So we have that 2 feet plus the 7 feet, so it's 9 feet
I'm sorry,
separating.
can you bring that back up on the screen for me there, please? Whoever. Show us that again, because we couldn't see. From your corner of your dock to
Okay,
where
so
their
if
dock
there
is.
was, yes, the adjacent dock to the east is 7-foot setback.
Okay,
And because of this, if we drew the line straight out between his 7 feet, you can see the angle here, that gains another, it's actually 2.5 feet, so it's about 9.5 feet. You can almost navigate between the two of us.
And I know you had mentioned that your neighbor to the east, they bring their boat in from the other opposite side of where
Correct.
you're going to be. But
Both neighbors bring it in from the opposite sides.
do they, it seems like the one, if there was any objection, it'd come from the one to the east. It looks just because of the proximity.
And they've agreed,
They said that they had no objection.
Okay. That's all I have.
No questions.
sir. My question's already been answered, so if you can stand to the side for just a moment, please. Anyone here would like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Go ahead and have a seat, guys. Hello.
How are you?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Denise Gannon, 285 Diana Boulevard, the adjacent house.
Sir?
Tim Gannon, 285 Diana Boulevard, Merritt Island.
And your which house?
We are to the west.
Okay,
Thanks.
so, excuse me, if I'm looking at it from the water, left or right?
And y'all, we have pictures.
To the left.
We'll show you.
To the left, okay.
Yes.
You're the one that's going to be furthest away, your dock will be furthest away from theirs, correct?
Furthest away our property touches, but we're on
All
the
right,
angle.
Hang on. Please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes, sir?
How may we help you?
Can I pass these out to y'all since we didn't have anything submitted?
You may, but I cannot return them.
That's fine.
But that's fine.
Okay.
We're going to go over it, so we don't expect you to like sit here and read it. I'm just going to walk through it.
I can't, if you're
There's
talking, you
an
got to be in the
additional
microphone.
2 letters in there for opposition.
Thanks.
Mr. Bodie, letters of opposition, can they present them like this, or do they have to be submitted to you guys in advance?
They can submit them right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just want to make sure. Thank you.
I'm going to turn, oh, it is on. Go ahead.
I first want to say thank you for your time. Denise is going to do all the talking. I just want to say one thing. We're in opposition for this for one reason, is that it's for a want, not a need. As Denise will show later on in the presentation, there are other options that they can use to get their boat out of the water, which we rightfully expect. Everybody needs to get their boat out of the water. And those options do not require any variance at all. So with that being said, I'll let Denise finish up.
Okay.
We're just going to walk through this package, and then I have some comments. So just quick, I'm going to kind of give the bottom line up front, just a little background. Next page. Some impacts, because out of all the properties, we're essentially impacted the most. Some alternatives and some other options. So just to talk at the beginning, again, this equates to 100% deviation to what the code allows. Everyone would love to build a dock with no rules. That would be wonderful. But we also don't agree in approving these because we are touching the property and we are greatly affected, which we'll be able to show. The current homeowner at 305 Ursa, they knowingly purchased that house. They had a 20-foot boat. They knew they had 31.2-foot water frontage. When they purchased the house 2 years ago, there was an existing legal dock in place. They had the survey showing the property boundaries. They also had access to the current regulations and codes. So they knew what they had going into this. It wasn't a surprise. The variance request, as my husband stated, is more of a desire and want, which requires 100% of all the code removal. We don't feel that the options that they have available to them deny our neighbors any rights enjoyed by others in the same. We're boat owners. We know you want to get your boat out of the water. We, of course, want to be able to access the navigable waterway. But we wouldn't do it at the expense of our neighbors. And we made sure we didn't do that when we did ours. So there are, at least that we're going to present today, 2 other options that do not require a variance at all. Using parallel dockage instead of a proposed perpendicular structure that they propose does not require a variance and does not interfere with the reasonable use of the navigable waterway. All right, so I'll try to make this brief. A little background. Again, I went over, they've purchased the house about 2 years ago. There were no unknowns to them. They had access to the survey. They know what boat they had. They know how much water frontage. That is a picture of the existing dock that was there previously. The previous owner was a boat owner. We knew them. The previous owner lived there for 21 years. So we live in the adjacent property. You can see a picture. We're off to, on the left, the blue dot. We've been the same owners for 19 years now. Last year, we spent the entire year redoing our entire backyard with our dock, seawall, and pool. We did that based on knowing what our neighbors could have put in for a dock that was legal. We also, our house faces down the canal. We don't face directly, we're not perpendicular with the canal. With the neighbors across, we look straight down the canal. So we also went to the neighbors on the right-hand side of us, which aren't in this picture, and went and talked to them when we built ours. You know, hey, we want to put a dock right here. What are your plans? Because they didn't have a dock at the time. And also we wanted to put a roof on our dock at the time. So we actually went over there, spoke to them. We're completely transparent. We want to put a roof on our dock. Will that impede your view? They said, no, we have no objection to that. I said, is there a certain height you want? My husband was like, hey, where should this be so you can sit on your dock and enjoy looking down the canal? So we were very transparent and talked to them the whole way. Next chart. So just to go over some of the impacts to us, that top picture on the right is where the previous dock at our neighbor's house was. The yellow arrow points to where it was. It has since been removed when they had their seawall replaced. So, and that is the dock to the east. So you can see it right there. This is our backyard. We have an infinity pool that looks straight down the canal. So in essence, their dockage would stick out straight into that canal. It would decrease our property value. It literally would be like looking at a wall every time we're in our pool with our 8 grandchildren. And we sit on the end of the dock, we fish, we boat right there, we swim. 3 doors down, swims over to play with our grandkids. We all know the riparian rights. I'm not going to read the to yours, but one of them that really stood out to me is the right to extend and improve your property does not allow a landowner to intrude on your neighbor's rights either. We do have the right to an unobstructed view. But this would impede water traffic in a navigational canal, having this perpendicular structure. Because this is the projection furthest into the canal, even though it is the widest point in the canal. So understand there are kayaks going down there are canoes, there are jet skis, there's paddle boards, there's swimmers, and there are fishermen that sit all right there and they fish, they swim. They're all there, and it's not just singular traffic, it's multiple traffic. And being the widest point of the canal, everyone turns around right there, because once they passed our dock, the canal skinnies, and there isn't a place to turn around. The Christmas boat parade, everyone turns around right there. It's too skinny to get beyond that. So if you start impeding on that, that cannot happen. So it's also a safety issue, because there's boat traffic. We have a lot down our canal. When we purchased our property, there were no instructions to our view. For 21 years we've lived there. This is our forever home. So we researched when we did our backyard to make sure that we did it to not impede on anyone, and that we would do it to where no one could impede on us without our approval. And that's why we're here today, because this does affect us. So just to give you an example, the previous, the homeowners that just presented showed 2 white poles, and they said they stick out no further than anyone else down the canal. This is sitting in my backyard, and that is their white pole sticking out at least 5 to 6 feet further than every single dock that is down that canal, straight out my backyard. So you can see those 2 white poles and the wall that we would be staring at for our view, but in addition, impeding the navigational waterway by at least that much. That is from our back patio. The width of the canal, there's about 120 feet. If you went straight from the center line to the other center line. So 20% of that is 24 feet maximum that they could extend, or 30 feet, whichever is less. Can you please show the survey? They're requesting 27.3 feet sticking out from the corner of the canal, which goes, again, because of the crook in the canal directly in front of our property, and into that navigational waterway greater than 20%. So if you would switch that one more. On that survey, I did want to show the 27.3 feet circled on the left, and that their boat with motor is 21 feet, as depicted by the signed survey. Okay, so next picture. So the poles don't look so bad. You look at that and go, what's the problem? That's the problem. See that little space to the left? That's my seawall. Our pool looks over that, and that's what we're going to be staring at straight down the canal. In addition, our neighbors have mentioned multiple times they would like to do an upper deck, which I know they don't need to get approval to because you can go up. But if the variance is granted, we could have a double-decker, essentially, wall in front of us with a boat hanging there, which also impedes the traffic. So it would stick out. They would have to go out into the navigational waterway to pull straight in. So skip the next one. And so there's one more picture that you need to put up. This one. This picture is of our neighborhood. This is out of our neighbor's packet. You can see their house is highlighted. For neighborhood continuity, if you look at all those docks in the neighborhood, they're all parallel to their own property. They all know what waterfront they had. They all know what docks they could put in, and they all fit within their own property. We don't have a problem if they go parallel, but going perpendicular intrudes not only on our rights, in addition to the navigable waterway, and creates a safety issue in that widest part of the canal. You can see how it skinnies past our house. So, next chart. We've done some research, because if they would have come over and talked to us, we all could probably solve this problem together and not been here, because we don't want to be here, honestly. But we are the only ones to protect our house. This is our home. So option number 1 would be an elevator lift. There are multitudes of these in our neighborhood. These are just 2 pictures. We have seen them. They lift bigger boats than what they have. That would take less room than the 31.2 feet and would have no variance required at all. They would have ease of access to the waterway, and it would provide neighborhood continuity. You would be parallel to your seawall. Option number 2 would be a 4-pole lift. That lift would fit in with no variance whatsoever. They have a 20-foot boat, or 21-foot with motor by their survey. They have 31.2 feet. Because they have less than 50 foot of water frontage, they only need a 5-foot setback. So you can see the math.
That's not correct. They
No,
need 7.5
7.5
feet off of their side property lines as they extend out in the waterway.
As you extend out in the waterway.
If their boat is 20 feet wide, if it was 20 feet long with the motor, and their
Not
property's
perpendicular,
only.
parallel. The dock would only stick
No,
out.
I'm saying that the boat and the watercraft cannot extend into the 7.5 foot setbacks also.
Okay.
So they would need a variance whether they're, have a 20-foot boat
I
just parked
read, I did
along
read
that.
somewhere, I'd have to look it up, but that if they had less than 50-foot water frontage, they could go to a 5-foot setback. Okay,
Not so.
that's fine, but it's 7.5 feet, so their boat's only 21, but they could put something much smaller, which would be a minimum variance, and not ask for what they're asking for. Here is a picture of their boat docked parallel to their seawall. It fits, it works. Their motor's angled right there, but it works. And if you look on the previous pictures, there's a nice little cubby hole for it. There was a dock there before. So in summary and closing, this variance equates to 100% deviation of what the code allows. You all have rules for a reason, and we understand why. We do not agree in approving the variance for the boat dock and a moored watercraft at 305 Ursa Avenue. That homeowner, when they bought that house less than 2 years ago, knew what they had. They knew that their boat hasn't changed, the rules haven't changed, the dock there was existing, was legal. Nothing's changed. They knew what they were getting into if they did their due diligence. The variance request is the more the result of a desire and a want and not a need for reasonable use of the waterway. Or boat owners. We know you want your boat out of the water. We know you want to clean it, you want to maintain it, you want to be able to get on it, and you want to use it all the time. Those two options, which I'm sure there's more, but that's all we had time to research, allow them to do that. The examples that have shown that are in your packet by the other homeowners, they represents the end of a canal. We go to those ends of the canal where all the three docks are touching each other. Honestly, as a boat owner and a boat operator, it's horrible. You literally have to go straight down and back up till there's a gap between the docks, till you can back in and turn around. There's no navigation whatsoever. So they're actually irrelevant to where they live, which is on a corner, which is in the middle of a navigable canal. They're not at the end. But all their examples are at the ends of canals where three docks are all touching, and most of those properties have less than 20 feet. They have 15 and 16 feet, so they have to go in perpendicular. Our neighbors do not have to go in perpendicular. There are options to be parallel to their seawall. Unfortunately, this process has injured our neighborly relationship. There was zero communication to us at all prior to us receiving a letter from you all that there's going to be a variance hearing. So we walked over next door with that letter in hand to meet a hostile untruth, threatening behavior, and attitudes that if we did not agree and sign the paper to approve this variance without showing up here. So we don't appreciate that. So we greatly appreciate no retaliation. We are allowed to be here for you to hear our comments. This is our home, and we enjoy it. I have one more comment that Diana Shores has many pie-shaped lots. If they had 15 feet, I could see them going in perpendicular, but not with 30. It's not unusual. That lot shape is not unusual. We lived in Diana Shores 20 years. So that's all I have. There's some backup pictures in your package just to show the situation.
Hang right there for a minute. Any questions? Sir.
Good afternoon. I know you presented several alternative options under the assumption that there were 5-foot setbacks, and if the setbacks were 5 feet, then maybe your options would have been applicable. But now knowing that setbacks are 7.5 feet on each side, that will only leave them with a 16-foot distance in between the two setbacks, and their boat's 20 foot. So, I mean, those options, I think you'd agree, are not applicable anymore.
I agree. I've talked to 2 dock builders that said if you had less than 50 foot, that you would be able to have 5-foot setbacks on a permit. So they said they've done them. I've talked to a couple dock builders.
No, that's incorrect. The way the code reads is that a boat dock, covered boat dock or pier, including pilings together with the moored vessel or watercraft and any waterway encroachments, shall maintain a clear navigable zone by extending no closer than 7.5 feet to the side property lines as projected in a straight line into the waterway.
Okay. I read it somewhere and I was told it by 2 boat dock builders. Understood. Go ahead.
You mentioned there was another dock in that location prior to the current homeowners
Yes, sir.
moving in. Can you describe that dock a little bit more specifically?
There's a picture up there. It was about 16 feet wide by 12 feet deep. It was a platform dock. A boat lift would fit perfectly on it.
It would, I'm sorry, it was.
boat lift would
It was
fit
16 feet
In
wide.
length, across parallel to the seawall, and 12
Keep going.
feet
What
out.
chapter?
1, 2, page 4.
And so when we,
Oh, I'm sorry, for packet, I'm sorry.
yep.
I'll just give you this one.
All right, this one, previous, okay, I see it, thank you.
Yep. And if you, I know that's a platform, however, they were a boat owner, and you would just have to put pilings and a lift right under there, and their boat could be parallel to their seawall.
But they would still would have needed a variance because their boat length and putting in the lift would require them to come back for a variance.
For the 2.5, from 7.5 to 5 feet.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Sir?
No, sir.
Ms. Mallard? Ms. Newman? I have one. How far is your boat dock from your property line on the short end? Obviously, from their end, there's a long way.
Yes. Are you, which side are you talking about? Their side or the other side?
Looking at it to the left.
7.5.
Okay, so you're right on that property line. So in order to pull your boat in, you actually have to pull in front of the neighbor's property to bring your boat in. Okay.
And they've been doing that with their boat recently, and they pull all the way around to park parallel, and we have no problem with that. I mean, there, like you said, there's a little cubby hole for a dock right there.
Okay.
And we have to do the same thing, and
So you're right on the 7.5-foot setback. And for lack of better terms, you do encroach into the neighbor's property to get into yours.
just to pull in and to pull out, yep, but
And I see your boat sticking out of the end of that, though. Does your boat motor extend beyond your dock?
beyond our dock,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It was all permitted, approved,
Because
and
the
closed.
aerial is showing the back end of your boat sticking beyond the dock.
I don't know. I didn't know our boat had anything to do with this. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We had it all permitted, permits all approved and closed.
I'm just asking a question. I'm not being
Nope, that's fine.
adversarial. I'm just,
No, and listen,
okay.
in reference to our neighbor's boat, if their motor stuck over 2 feet versus having that wall that would stand in front of our property, we would definitely be okay with that.
All right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Hello.
Hey, how are you?
All right, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Eileen Blackburn. I live at 230 Artemis Boulevard, Merritt Island.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
Favor or opposition?
Opposition.
And you live where in regards to their house?
If you pass their house going down towards the end of the canal, towards the west, I'm about 6 houses down on the opposite side of the canal.
Okay. How may we help you?
The big thing that jumped out for my husband and I was the picture of the 2 PVC poles. And what it looks like is it's really sticking out more into the canal than all of the other docks, which we feel would create a safety hazard with the traffic that comes through there. If you have double boats going in and out, it makes it a little bit tighter. So looking at that, that is an issue. Everybody wants to have their dock bigger. If I could extend my dock out into the canal more, I would love that. But unfortunately, you can't do it because of the narrow waterways. So that was one thing that really jumped out and we were concerned about.
Okay.
And if they had a 5-foot variance, yes, you would be able to put in the 4-pole lift.
Okay.
So there are other options if they had a more narrow variance on each side.
Any questions from anyone? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm going to give you a chance to come back and talk in just a minute. But I need about a 3-minute recess. I got to run to the restroom. So we're going to take a recess for a moment. We are back in order. Please come back to the platform or podium, guys. Your rebuttal at this point.
I think it's hard to see in pictures, but I'm not sure if Mr. McCann had seen in the backyard, when we put those poles in, they do not extend out. Here's some pictures. They do not extend out. The neighbors that were just here, if you measure their pole from their dock across the canal, that is a shorter distance than what ours will be. So my husband's showing you right now. We can only go out where our intersecting lines, you see where our property is? So we have to stay
I'm
within
sorry.
right
If you're
here.
going to talk, you got to be in the microphone. I'm sorry.
So we have to stay within those intersecting lines.
Correct.
Pull this back a little bit, Larry. So you can see, if we're staying within those intersecting lines, obviously we're not going out in the canal. So take that away. Like if you draw, you can see our property lines pretty clearly. Move this. That's our dock on there, those little two skinny lines. If our dock stays within that little pie, we're not impeding that canal for traffic. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
So the pictures that were shown, I mean, depending on an angle that you take, it makes it look different. But we're staying within that small thing. Our dock isn't going to extend out past the neighbors on the other side. And their boat does stick out. This is, if they're talking about views, their neighbor to the side of them, this is their neighbor's view of the back of their boat that sticks out. So when they're in their pool, that's the neighbor's view, is their entire dock. It's a huge dock. They have a massive dock that they put there to save their view, but they took their neighbor's view.
And
So
you can see the motors clearly out and projected, what you had.
So if we're talking views, and then us, we angled it away from them. So if you look and see how our dock is angled, where's the original
And by
drawing?
the way, if you
Where's the
look at
original?
well, we'll get to the original.
Closer to the microphone.
Sorry. I usually have a big mouth, but this view is down the property line.
Leave those poles on there for just a minute, would you please? Okay.
So that furthest pole is following the property line.
Point to the furthest pole.
And
Okay.
So there is no,
There you go. That's good.
kind of see, so right there, you can see, this is our neighbor's dock.
correct. I'm standing on the east neighbor's dock, looking at the
So-
west at
So
their dock.
If you go from that dock to this dock, those poles are within it.
Correct. 5 feet inside of that line.
So we aren't taking up the waterway.
Okay.
So it's like.
Can you make
that's
sure that
what
you
I
speak
meant.
into the microphone so that we can
I'm
pick it
sorry.
up, the recording?
So we aren't taking up any more room into the canal than our two neighbors, our two closest neighbors actually extend further out.
There's one other.
And then,
The other point was that this structure, if approved, would somehow impede their view. Their view right now is of the dock that I'm standing on. So there's already a structure there. We will be in between that dock, but there is an obstruction. There is no house with a dock that does, you look left or right, that you don't see another dock. Their view is straight out from their property. They enjoy 80%, 90% view straight out, beautiful. They did fantastic work, infinity pool. We are, if you can turn that picture around, we are in the envelope between an existing structure and their property line. In other words, if you look to the right or look to the east, you're gonna see a dock. Now, it'll be our dock, but there's already a dock there. In rebuttal of the original structure, it was 12 by 12. It was a platform, and there was no lift on it, no poles, no tie-up poles. It was a basic 12 by 12 platform there was no lift structure on it whatsoever.
Could you have put a lift,
No.
as they're stating,
So-
vertical in that location? Is that a feasible thing to do or no?
so the reason why it wasn't feasible was what was explained to me by Mr. Bodie. Because of the fact that we have to stay within that triangle, even if we try to put it perpendicular, like if we try to do it that way, we're still going outside of the triangle, which there is no variance that we can get for that, because we have to be able to walk onto our boat and get onto our boat. So the structure that was there was either 12 by 12 or 14 by 14, the original structure that was there. And we can't put our boat, because it's still going to go outside that triangle when we add in a spot to put the lift and be able to get onto our boat and take care of it. And then as for the arm lift, we wouldn't be able to put a roof on that. We wouldn't be able to maintain our boat with a arm lift. And honestly, we're angled away. If you really look at it, they still have a view to the channel. If you're talking riparian rights, their riparian rights to the view of the channel is directly to the channel, not down a canal. So when you look at it, if you're looking, she had mentioned it, riparian rights. So our dock is the little tiny, and that's not even accurate because it goes straight over this way. But anyways, our riparian rights are this area right here.
Again, you gotta be in the microphone to talk.
So those are our riparian
He
rights.
can point and you can.
Their riparian rights, and theirs is out there for directly out to the channel. She wants her view down the canal, but your right to a view is out from your house, which we angled the dock away. So if you can see right here, all of
Again, don't talk.
all
there you
of
go.
that is their view. So we're not, we angled it away from their property. So she still got from her sitting in that backyard, we're not impairing the view. We angled it as far away from them as we could.
And,
Sir, I'm sorry, microphone.
Mike.
I'm sorry. Take it with me. Also, a quick rebuttal. I'm all form and function, and maintenance on a boat is constant, as you can imagine. If you're not a boater, consider yourself lucky, but it's constant maintenance. You have to be able to access the front, the sides, the back, the rear, as everybody else is aware. If you notice, they have a fantastic covered dock. Everybody else has a covered dock. There is no form or functionality of putting a lift and a roof, a covered roof on top of those lifts. As you saw in their pictures, there are no roofs depicted. I don't think they're actually legal or utilized that way. Now, the other issue is if they, in the future, want to put a small dock, they've voiced their intent or pleasure of putting they have a smaller boat that they mentioned to us that they may want to bring there. And they have all their rights to put another 12, 15-foot dock in front of their seawall. If they do that, then that is going to completely hinder me. I cannot enter this way from the east, and I would not be able to enter my seawall from the west if they put any kind of structure in the future. And as we had a neighbor to the west, their next door neighbor, who came at our original hearing that was tabled in support, and he was the one that provided that this is his view.
Every night.
Again, please don't speak unless you're at the microphone.
He came last time, but unfortunately, he provided us with this picture in rebuttal, potential rebuttal, saying that that's his view of their boat and their dock. So, of course, he can see straight out riparian rights to his view to the threaded stream to the middle of the canal. But if you look left, look right, you're going to see boat docks.
Okay. Is there anything further that is pertinent to your request at this point?
And then I just wanted to say on this drawing, you can clearly see what they were saying is if we go perpendicular, if we stay within the intersecting lines, you can see that it is about a 12 by 12 area that we would have. And then if we tried to put our boat in, it would still stick out past those lines. So when we sat down with Mr. Bodie and we were talking about it, the only way we can do it is the way that we proposed.
Okay. Questions? Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We need a motion, then we can go into discussions.
I'd like to make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the variance requests as depicted in the survey for both requests.
We have a motion to approve both requests as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
A second.
Ms. Mallard is seconded. Discussion. Sir?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to not support the motion for the following reasons. The owners bought the property, I'm assuming approximately 2 years ago. I don't think that's in dispute or somewhere thereabouts. And so they knew what they knew that they had an existing dock then. And there was obviously, they knew what they were buying when they bought it. I fully support their rights to use their property as they see fit, but within the established guidelines that the county has already established. And in order for us to go outside the county's guidelines and give them a variance, it cannot be injurious to the area. And based on the neighbor's testimony, I believe it will hurt their property value, which would be injurious to her or to the neighbor to the west. And I think it's a traffic jam in there for sure. How it is now, and it will only be greater if we approve this. So I'm not going to support the motion.
You want now or later? Comments now or later?
I'd like to make some comments.
Please.
I did visit the property several months ago, before the first hearing was scheduled, and I had an opportunity to walk up to the seawall and see with my own eyes the configuration of the property and how the layout of the neighbor's property is and the canal. It was obvious that that was the widest area of the canal, and as a boater, to me, you can boat 3 or 4 boats side by side and wouldn't have any issues with that distance. I look left, I look right on the overhead map, and the canal does go tighter, and the distance between the homes on the opposite side of each other and the docks on the opposite side of each other are greatest actually at the subject property, and gets narrower as you navigate away from the subject property. I'm trying to consider everything, and I empathize with your situation. I know people who buy homes on the water want to have a nice view, but they also want to be able to use their homes for boating purposes or fishing purposes. They want to use the water, not just have a view of the water. And when I'm looking at views and trying to consider how injurious this situation is, I am looking at the opposition's house and their dock, and it looks to me as if it might be the biggest dock in the neighborhood, and it's built just at the setback of the adjoining neighbors. And we saw the photograph and how much of that view is obstructed with just that dock in and of itself. When I'm comparing that to what the applicants presented, I'm not seeing an obstruction such as that. I feel confident the applicants are using everything in their power to minimize the intrusions or minimize any kind of injury to the neighbors, the neighborhood, the community, by designing the smallest dock they can have in that area. And any other design, I'm convinced, based on your presentation and the comments of the county, there's no alternative. There's no actual alternative than what you presented, and I can appreciate that. And I believe as a property owner, you should use your property the way you see fit, as long as it's reasonable. And unfortunately, code does not allow for you to have any dock, actually, that would be reasonable. And that's why we have variances. That's why we have these hearings, and we have a responsibility to your neighbors, just like we do to you. And we have to determine what is reasonable and balance your rights with your rights. And when I make that balancing act and I try to determine what's reasonable to me, especially because I've been to the property, I truly believe that your rights to have your dock should apply, and unfortunately, your beautiful view down the river or down the canal may be slightly impacted. You still have your view straight out the back. You have a beautiful home. I get it, But I think property owners should have the right, and people should be able to build docks when they have a waterfront house. And, should their property be slightly wider and they didn't need the variance, that dock would be in the same location as it is where they're trying to put it now, and would have the same obstruction of view. So based on the circumstances and the horrendous situation that you're in with the size and the shape of your property, I'm supportive of approving the variances. And I know it's not going to make the neighbors happy, and I apologize for that, but I have to think about everybody.
Mr. Newman?
As an understatement, I'm torn on it. On the one hand, I'm very sympathetic, one, to the neighbors' property value, as well as knowing that the applicants already had a boat of that size and not sure, how they intended on using that property when they bought it. That being said, I also take a look at it and see that they don't have a lot to work with the property that they have, and would future owners and individuals have a lot of opportunity with that property. So still kind of gearing it out, probably figure it out at the vote time, but definitely torn on in between on those.
Ms. Mallard?
I believe every homeowner living on the Space Coast enjoy their backyard, their space, their pools, their boating. I know I do, right? I think it was commendable that the neighbors came and showed us another option for them. However, I'm sorry that those people told her 5 feet versus the 7 feet, which made a tremendous difference in the rights of it. I truly believe that as a homeowner, it's your choice. And I believe that they also really worked very hard to ensure that they were in the guidelines and they boat wouldn't mess up their backyard living space, so to speak. So I definitely stand on approving this.
Okay. Mr. Bodie, I know you worked with these folks intently on trying to work this out. Did you see any other options than what is being presented here that was reasonable in your mind?
It's very limited on what they can do, and that's the reason they went back to their surveyor and took their plans, took their boat size, and had him do the best they could to fit something in there.
Okay. So in your opinion, this is about the only way that it works, am I correct?
I don't know. There might be other ways to do it.
Okay. Not going to answer that the way I want you to, are you? Before I read the 6 points, now I'll give you my opinion. I'm, as Mr. Newman, I'm kind of torn in a lot of ways. I never like exceptions to boat docks. I never do. I'm always the guy, in many cases, the lone guy that's voting no, because I don't like exceptions to boat docks. I think it's a slippery slope. I think once you start exceptions, then the next guy wants more, then the next guy wants more, then the next guy wants more. In this case, I don't think you're looking for more. I think you're looking for some way to make something happen. I don't think you're sticking out any further than the dock next to you, which means you're not going to impair traffic down the canal. Are you going to impair views? Yes. Okay, no doubt about that. But then anybody that puts a dock in impairs views, okay? So somebody's affected somewhere. Obviously, the neighbor right next to you has a greater effect on me when they're talking than somebody 6 houses away, 7 houses away, whatever. That tends to be a friend that, is siding with the person that doesn't like what you're doing, which doesn't affect me that much, okay? The person directly across from you, possibly. The people directly beside you, obviously, okay, have an effect with my thought process. I think you've worked hard at this, because as I know, you were here before, and we tabled this so that you could go back and rework it and make it feasible for you to be able to do. My mind does think, can you put it sideways along the dock or along your seawall and make it work that way? You're still going to affect views if you build a covered dock. You're still going to have a variance because it's only 30 feet and you need 15 feet, 7.5 feet on each side. So you're still going to have a variance. You know, it would be less of a variance, but your 100% is where your adjoining lines are extending out at an angle, not directly against the property line. So I'm taking that into consideration as well. You do have a unique property, you have a unique design to it. On the same hand, you knew that when you bought it, okay? So there's a lot that I'm weighing out in my mind right now, and as I'm reading through these 6 points, I'm still deciding what I'm voting, okay? I do appreciate everyone's comments, okay? As I look at the overhead pictures, you guys have a really nice dock. It's huge. You know, and just word of caution, if this picture that I'm looking at is correct and your boat motor's sticking out of the back end of that, you're not in compliance with code. The boat motor has to be underneath and cannot extend beyond that 7.5 foot setback. So just caution to you. You know, be aware of that, which is one of the things that we discussed with you guys when you were here before. If I remember correctly, and you can shake your head no at me if I'm wrong, part of the problem was your boat was going to stick beyond where the dock was, or the motor was going to stick beyond where the dock was.
Well, the
And-
boat wasn't included with it all into the setbacks is what it was before.
Correct.
That's the reason we had it tabled, so that they could include that, the watercraft with it.
So we've had to go back and take that into consideration. So but there's a lot of things I'm weighing out. I'm just letting you know I'm not unsympathetic to where you are. I don't like saying yes to boat docks. I just don't. But there are circumstances that make me think maybe, okay, this might be one that is reasonable to say, you know, yes to. That being said, let me go through the 6 points. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. I believe there are special conditions and circumstances, and that special conditions and circumstance would be the shape of the land. As it comes to a point where, although there are other properties admittedly in the area that are similar, most are not dealing with something that comes to a point like yours is. Special conditions, circumstances not result to the actions of the applicant, and they do not. You didn't lay out the land, you didn't do the divisions. That granting the variance requested would not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by provisions of this chapter of the lands, buildings, or structures in identical zoning classification. Again, if we were to grant this variance, I don't believe it would be giving you any special privileges, that we would not consider anyone that is requesting a variance for this type of use. Little enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship of the applicant. This is where this one gets difficult, okay? In my opinion, it would not deprive you of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties, in the fact that you could have a boat, you just couldn't necessarily have the boat that you currently have, nor would you be able to have the dock that you're desiring to have. Would you still be able to use the waterway? Yes. Would you still be able to have a dock? Yes. Would you still be able to have a boat? Yes. It would just be different than what you have proposed. So in my opinion, I don't think that it would deprive you of the rights commonly enjoyed by others in the identical zoning classification. That being said, Mr. McCann, your opinion of that point. And the reason I'm doing that is because he is your representative, and these points are opinions. They're my opinion as chair, and I want his opinion as your representative.
I don't want to get it wrong. You're asking my opinion of what?
Do you believe that if we did the literal enforcement of this chapter, it would deprive them of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same identical zoning
Absolutely.
classification?
Yes.
You believe it would? Okay, that's what I wanted to know. That way, both of those are on the record. We understand? That the variance granted is the minimum variance that would make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. It would be the minimum variance required for the structure in which you are desiring to purchase or build. Granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. I don't believe it's detrimental to public welfare, as you're not extended beyond any other dock there. As far as injurious to the area involved, again, that's a judgment call. Is it going to hamper views? Yes, but any dock hampers views. But is it in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter if we were to say yes? That's where it becomes difficult, because you're asking for 7.5 feet to 7.5 feet. Okay. That's where I have a challenge with that. And if we approve it all the way to the boundary, are we in harmony with the chapter? I don't think so. But again, that's my opinion. Sir, I want your weighing in on that one as well.
Because the property lines extend out in a diagonal and not straight out, I'm just going to disagree with you.
It's okay. That's why I want it.
Sorry, Chairman.
No, please understand, and this is not just in this case. I do this in most of these, and if I forgot to do any today, I apologize. When we get to that one, I generally ask the person that's representing, because you go out, you visit the property, you see it. I don't. I see the aerials, and I make a determination based on that. That's a hard one to answer, because again, it's an opinion. So I want on the record both my opinion and the opinion of the representative, okay? And if the attorney tells me later I'm wrong in doing that, I'll get beat up, but no, nevertheless, we've been doing that for a while now because I think it's advantageous. All right, any other comments, guys? Ladies, my apologies, guys, is my generation's term of saying everybody. I'm going to get beat up for that one of these days, but nevertheless. All right, we're going to call for a vote. All in favor of approving the variances as depicted on survey, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
And that leaves it to me. And I intentionally waited. Lord. I have 2 yeses, 2 nos, and now I have to decide what's best.
Can you clarify that? I think we have 3 yeses.
No, I'm a no.
Okay. By name. Ms. Mallard?
Yes.
Mr. Noman?
No.
Mr. McCann?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Thank you. Which leaves it to me. And I have to make that decision, which is very, very tough for me right now. I think you've worked hard to make it happen. I shouldn't do this, and I hope I don't get in trouble. I think you've done everything possible to make it happen. But I cannot look at the fact that you're asking for the full 7.5 feet and feel comfortable with that. And that's where my issue lies. And that's what I'm weighing in my head right now as I'm talking, and I'm talking just to give myself time to figure out what I'm doing. Forgive me, guys, but I want to make the right decision. I'm going to stick with the way I normally vote on these. I have to stay with my gut, my conscience here. Though there's a really huge part of me that wants to say yes to you. I just can't do it. So I'm a no. And I'm sorry. That is our last case before us today. We stand adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.